Hi, BookTube. Welcome to Jackie's Literary Corner. I am Jackie, and it's time for another review. So, I am going to review for you guys Salem's Lot. So, this is a book I've already read once before, as I said previously. But, as I also said, it's been so long since I read it the first time that I barely remember it, and the little bit I did remember was probably more from the 2003 adaptation starring Rob Lowe, Samantha Mathis, and James Cromwell. And I don't know the names of the two. There are two other actors I recognize. I meant to look that up, but I totally forgot. This was his second published novel, and of course, it's his first one where he includes a writer main character, which becomes one of his signature character tropes that he includes in most of his books. At least one of his main characters, or the main character, is often a writer. I guess it makes it easier for him to write that himself because he understands the writer and how the writer's mind works. And this also includes his signature small town with dark secrets and skeletons in the closet scenario. I don't know if you would consider Carrie had done that too, because I'm sure Carrie took place in a small town, but I feel like it focused mostly on Carrie and her mother, and then the school, and the students that go there. I don't know if it necessarily focused on the town, even if they were in a small town. So this is his quintessential vampire novel. If you are, first thing I would say, if you have not read this and hated Twilight, or just disliked it, and want to, or just are tired of the YA romanticized version of vampires, you'll probably like this a lot more, because this is very much vampires are monsters, and they are going to suck your blood and either turn you into one of them or just plain kill you. The main vampire in this is a monster. He's not some romantic hero that's lusting after you. The only thing he wants from you is to drain you of your blood, your lifeblood. So like I said, our main character is a moderately successful author. He lived in the town that the story takes place in as a little boy. The town is called Jerusalem's Lot, and his nickname is either the Lot or Salem's Lot, hence the title. And when he was a kid, he wanted to be part of this group of boys, older boys. He wanted to hang out with them. So they, as an initiation, they had him go into the infamous haunted Marston house, where Hubie Marston killed his wife and committed suicide. And he has to bring out something to show his friends that he actually went in there. And that night when he went in there, he witnessed something that traumatized him forever. And now, years later, as an adult, he has decided to come back to Jerusalem's Lot to write a book about the Marston house. Unfortunately, someone else has arrived in Jerusalem's Lot and has bought the Marston house to these two men, Mr. Barlow and Mr. Stryker, who have decided to open up a furniture shop. And weird things start happening around there. Like a dog ends up dead, and these two little boys go missing. And like I said, this is a vampire novel, so I'm sure you can guess where this is going. And of course, because Ben is also new to the town, some people are suspicious of him and Stryker and Barlow, who is the silent partner who has not shown his face yet. So far, this is so good. Like I said, if you do not like a lot of the YA vampire stories that romanticize vampires, then this is definitely for you if you have not read it. Like, first of all, the vampire in this Barlow which maybe that's a spoiler. So, he is very scary and intimidating, and both him and Stryker are very charming and charismatic, but like in a very hypnotic way. not enough. I'm lusting after. Although, well, actually, with Striker, there's a little bit of lusting from the women, the older women that come into the furniture shop. But he really does. Barlow really does lurk in the shadows, and unlike Dracula, which kind of focused. Yeah, you had the Count in the beginning of the book and at the end of the book in the climax, but you have more. I feel like Barlow makes more appearances than Dracula does, or at least he's sprinkled throughout the book. He appears throughout the book and lures his victims. Um, so I think Stephen King does a better job to modern appealing, makes him more appealing to modern audiences because we get more action and more gore, and with the vampires it's not just a hero story and oh the heroes are they're curious about this and they're worried because you have like really the most vampire action you got is like the two female vampires. Like you got I feel like in Dracula you got very little vampire interaction. You got a little bit like with Lucy and of course the female vampires and stuff, but in this one you actually get to see a lot more of that. And I really liked how you actually got to see when he goes after those victims, you see their transformation, their humanity slowly dying. You see that process. So it's sad and sickening at the same time because you feel bad for those of their loved ones that have not been bitten yet and not been taken over by the vampires. You feel bad as they watch their loved ones slowly die, like, you know, becoming weak and, sickly looking and not being able to eat anything because, of course, the only thing they are starting to crave now is blood. So I thought that was a nice added touch to it. Instead of just all of a sudden they're vampires and you see them in their coffins, you actually get to see that whole process. I think it makes it a little bit more disturbing in a good way. I also once again, Stephen King builds up this town. He really introduces you to the residents of the town and talks about their dark secrets, and you get every gritty detail about these people. And for some people that might be too much, it might be boring, but it really allows you to get attached to the characters and get to know them or like hate them really passionately. And in this case, it also adds the extra layer of you can see how they were lured in by the vampire, by Barlow. He comes up with, he's able to rely on their dark desires, the things that they want most, that are selfish. It might not be necessarily a good thing, not always pure. Like, characters lusting after someone they're not allowed to have. There's one character, Dud Rogers, who has a hump on his back, so he's mocked and ridiculed. And Barlow promises to give Dud Rogers, make him more attractive and appealing to people. And helps people get what they want, basically. So I think in this case, exploring these people and knowing a little bit about them as people and their secrets is a way to explain how Barlow was able to pull them in and put them under his spell. He promised them things that were their greatest desires. I thought Ben was a pretty good character. He was very likable and relatable. He had trauma that he had to deal with, from his past that he was coping with. And it kind of added the whole reason for why some people might be suspicious of him, not just because he suddenly arrived and he's new, but also that he has a dark past himself. He was just an average nice character that you felt bad. He does have a romance in the story. And the romance was cute, very sweet. I did feel bad for when the romance kind of falls apart. I did feel sympathetic for them, and all the main group of characters, the one I like season 2, she was an okay character. She had to deal with a difficult, controlling mother. She still lived at home with her parents. And a mom that was very protective and worried for her. And she's, a likable character, but again, nothing special. And then the characters that I liked, though, were Mark Petrie. He was he was a favorite, and then Matt Burke and Father Callahan. I really liked them. First, I think I could probably relate to Mark being really into what he's interested in. I mean, I'm not necessarily into monster movies in a sense that the way he is, but I do really enjoy monster movies. I definitely can relate to having an interest and a passion for something. And it kind of helped him in the long run because it made him better prepared and willing to accept. And also, I think because he was really young, he was more willing to accept the situation that vampires were real and they were coming after them. He wasn't questioning him like all the adults were questioning and wondering, no, this is not real, this can't be happening, it's illogical, and I hope you're losing your mind or you're just crazy or whatever. Which my theory about that is, why would you want to believe it anyway? I think that's why, whether even if it was real, even if there was such things as vampires, I think people probably wouldn't want to believe that anyway. Because who would want to? Yes, there are pros to being a vampire. You live forever, you're super strong. You don't know, not only do you live forever, but you're eternally good looking and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of pros. There are some pros being a vampire. But there's more cons than pros. You're undead. You can't eat food anymore, eat or drink food anymore. You can only live off of blood. Unless, depending on most of the vampire stories, you can't go out in the sunlight anymore, which I think would be boring in my opinion. And also in some situations, like in Anne Rice's vampires, there are certain things you can't do anymore. And so me, in my opinion, I wouldn't want to be a vampire. I mean, once I became a vampire, I probably wouldn't care anymore. I would be enjoying it. But as a human, still, I would not want to be a vampire. But Mark is more willing to accept. And there's a scene where him and Susan are getting ready to investigate, confront Barlow and see if they can kill him. And he's like, Mark sees Susan and thinks, her little makeshift stake is not going to work because it's kind of not. It's just a stupid little fence post kind of thing. It's kind of weak looking. And he's just like, oh, she's like, oh my god, what are you doing here? Because he kind of stuck up on her. And he's like, oh, let me guess, you're going to also kill Barlow too, try to kill Barlow too. And of course, at first she's like, oh no, it's not real, that's crazy. And because she thinks, oh, I can't scare the kid. I don't want to scare this kid. But the funny thing is, Mark has already accepted it. He already believes it. He already had an encounter himself where a vampire tried to get him to invite him in. There's also, I also like Matt's character. I'm probably very much between Mark and Matt as far as my personality goes. Matt is becomes kind of the Van Helsing of the group. He does all the research. He's a teacher. And then you have Father Callahan, who, what's really interesting about him is that he's a priest, but he's very, very cynical, and he has a drink. He's an alcoholic, and he's just got some issues, and he's not all up on this high horse and all preachy about it, and even though he's a priest. So I really like that. He makes a more interesting character, a more compelling character, because he's not self-righteous. He's not, I'm right, you're wrong. I'm going to go sacrifice whoever I want just to make sure that we protect my belief system. Like in the Magisterium in His Dark Materials. I'm watching the show right now. I'm on the last season. I'm almost done with it, actually. where they kind of have that self-righteous. I mean, I love those storylines, where the church is, the villain or the antagonist at least. I always find that really interesting seeing the religious zealots. People are so obsessed and are so determined to use their beliefs and hide behind God and use God as an excuse to punish people that don't think the way they do. I really like that, but it was also kind of a breath of fresh air that we had a religious figure, or a character that's meant to be a religious figure, not exactly being the best example of one. And not in a self-righteous, angry, I'm gonna punish everybody for not believing the way I do, but just in questioning things and wondering, and questioning his own beliefs and wondering, is this real? Am I just imagining this? Or, I'm just doing what's expected of me as a man of God. Of course, it does get him in trouble later, is all I'm gonna say. And so those are my favorite characters. And like I said, Matt Burke, the other thing I should mention why I like Matt Burke is not only is he a teacher, but he's a teacher of literature. So of course, as a reader, that automatically gives me I like your character. And he's not in an arrogant way, I'm right, you're wrong. It's this way. You have to see things the way I see it. Not in that way, but in a people think people are cool with him, although, with this situation going on, people do, kind of dismiss him a little bit, because he's an old man now. And there are some people, like his previous students, kind of dismiss him and don't take him seriously at times. But mostly people respect him and respect him as a teacher. There's another character, his doctor, Dr. James Cody. He's okay character, nothing really special. Now one of the things I had a problem with was that, there's scenes when everything is basically, the shit has hit the fan and everything is going wrong, and there'll be moments when characters are discussing what just happened or talking about the situation and talking out, and I'm like, why are you wasting time with this? What's going on. Why you know that you should not have let these characters separate from your group. Why are you doing this? There, with the Susan situation where she ends up submarine her and going to the Marston house, that kind of makes sense. In the sense that, of course, she would doubt it and question it and take that risk. I mean, she even is thinking to herself that, I'm doing the very thing that women do in books that annoys me, that women do in movies, where they go and I'm like, and talks about how she would go watch these movies as teenagers, thinks, I would never do that, and is thinking now, I'm doing that exact thing. So she's acknowledging that she's being dumb, actually, and probably taking an unnecessary risk. But the other situation that I'm thinking of that bugged me was that these characters, like I said, they realize it's like they just realized the other characters are in this bad situation, and they have not realized that for a second they forgot that they don't know where Barlow is, and he's already threatened some of them, and they're discussing it and thinking, this was, we should have done this, and how are we going to handle this now? Or, look what Barlow left us. And then they're like, oh, shit, wait, we got it, oh no, we should not have let these characters go off by themselves. I mean, I feel like they do it all the time in horror, where characters go off by themselves and do their own thing, and, thinking, I have to take care of this. And it's like, why did you do that? You didn't realize that if you're separated, you're gonna be an easier target for the monster. But of course, things wouldn't happen, and we wouldn't, certain things would not happen if they were smarter and didn't do that kind of thing. But yeah, that, like I said, that whole situation where their characters are discussing what just happened and what their next step is, it's like, why are we wasting time? You need to go and go to these other characters and make sure they don't get killed or turned in this case. Another thing is another thing this made me think of is in these kinds of stories, in these horror stories, when the characters are like, you're trying to explain the situation to someone, and even though, yes, in reality, I probably would respond the same way, but in these situations where these characters are trying to explain, this is real, this is what's going on, you're in danger, and while you have the other characters who are like, what are you talking about? You're crazy, and, what if you have corrupted this person in my life and mess with them, make them think there's real monsters? It's like, and basically, okay, to make it easier to explain this, so they're trying to, Barlow's threatened Mark's parents. So Mark and Father Callahan have decided to go to warn his parents, and they're talking very rationally and being practical and trying to explain to Mark's parents that what's going on and that they are in danger because there's a vampire. Which, yeah, on the one hand, I admit that I would have a hard time believing it too, but then they're wasting time discussing it. Even if I didn't believe, and maybe not, maybe I would do this, maybe I would respond the way they did, but part of me would want to be like, okay, I think you might be crazy, but I'm going to go along with this and humor you, because if you're not crazy, then something might happen and I might get killed. And that is exactly what happened. So Mark's parents, they tried to explain to him, and they're just talking to him like, his dad is talking to Father Callahan so condescendingly, and is like, oh, you have corrupted my son, you have messed with his head. And my other thought is, okay, Mark already believes in this. It had nothing to do with Father Callahan. First of all, Father Callahan doubted it in the beginning when they tried to explain to him what's going on. He was unsure if he believed it. He just was going to humor the situation until there was proof. Because he was like, oh, why don't we go talk to Stryker first and give him the benefit of the doubt, and then we'll see what happens from there. And so Mark already accepted the situation. He already believed. I mean, he was the one who snuck out and followed Susan to Barlow's house, being like, oh, we need to go kill him, so I better prepare a steak. So, I'm sorry. So, Father Callahan did not corrupt your son. Your son already believed in this stuff. Already questioned it. But for some reason, parents dismiss the idea that their kids maybe figure this out on their own, or we're already thinking about this on their own, and we're already scared because, they think, oh, you're just a kid, you're scared, you're letting your imagination run away with you, so I'm going to blame all the other adults in your life, and not consider the possibility that I just need to reassure you that it's not real, or at least consider be like, maybe talk to you and be like, what makes you think this is real? Instead of just being automatically, honey, it's not real, it's just your imagination and stuff. Instead of doing that, I think a parent should, even if it isn't real, I think a parent should be like, automatically, even if the kid's a little bit close to preteen years, the kid is scared and traumatized. So instead of being like dismissing and being like, it's just your imagination, it's not real, stop being such a child, just be more like, talk to them and be like, okay, what makes you think, like, why are you worried? Like, what makes you think this is real? Like, of course, this goes back to what I'm actually complaining about, which is because his parents are wasting time being like, how dare you? You are corrupting my son. You're crazy. And arguing with Father Callahan, who's talking very calmly and rationally about this and trying to explain to him, to warn their dad. He's all like, automatically dismisses it and says he's crazy and thinks he's messing with his son, which is not the case, because like I said, Mark thought about this on his own. He came up with this on his own, and he was confronted by a vampire. And of course, Mark, of course, knew that his dad wouldn't believe it anyway. He was like, when his dad dismissed the idea and was laughing it off, he told Father, like, I told you so. And, so they are wasting time, and then, bam, the lights go out, and the vampire shows up. So it's like, you were wasting time. You could have at least humored them, because if something bad happened and you had your proof, you could have at least gotten a chance to get away if you had humored the guy. But no, they cannot even begin to conceptualize the possibility. So, like I said, if this happens in real life, I think just in case, this kind of goes against my complaint here about just humoring them, because if it is real, then you could at least have a chance to escape and not get your ass kicked, or killed. But at least, talk to your child and just be like, even if they are a preteen, going on teenage years, just trying to understand why they're scared and why they believe in this. Because, like I said, if it is real, then you can at least have a chance to escape. Of course, as soon as you leave the room, if your kid gave you something to protect yourself, as soon as you leave the room, you'll probably throw it away anyway. Although, I don't know, I would probably keep it just to, show my kid that I trust them. Even if they're believing in something that my rational logic brain might not believe in. But yeah, that was the other thing. But of course, as far as I know, this stuff isn't real. So maybe I'm being silly. But yeah, I'm wondering, I'm thinking, why are you wasting time talking down to them and being like, this isn't real, blah, 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 and just judging them and being all condescending. Parents are so protective of their kids that when they believe in stuff that in their logical brains they know is not supposedly real, then they will just dismiss their kids' beliefs and get frustrated with them for believing in supposedly childish things, and will blame the other adults in their life. Anyway, so I will warn you, there is abuse of a baby in the book, which that part was so hard to read. I don't even know, I wonder how old that baby was, if it was actually a baby, or if it was, like a little bit older, like a little closer to a toddler, because, like, that was brutal reading that part. And then, of course, you find out that woman gets abused by her husband, so it's like, oh, great. That baby needs to get out of that situation. And then, like I said, it was kind of hard to read about the dog, as a dog lover, as a person with a dog. And I know it's fiction, obviously, but, it's still kind of, for me personally, it's still kind of hard to read that kind of stuff. I mean, it's not like I openly cry, I would probably get more emotional if I actually could physically see it, like if I saw that in the adaptation. I don't know if they include that stuff, in the adaptations, like maybe in the one that came in the 70s. But anyway, so yeah, those two parts were a little hard to read. Like I said, there's bullying in this, obviously. There's some, sexual talk in this. Not to, because, and there's characters cheating, and there's some characters cheating on each other. Like I said, this is Stephen King, so there's a lot of dark stuff. A lot of characters having skeletons in their closet. But yeah, so if you like vampire stories, but you're tired of the romanticized version, this is probably a lot more up your alley if you have not read it. It's really good. And this is one of the times where, like, people say famously that Stephen King does not know how to write endings, but I agree with Mike from Mike's Book Reviews that not all of his endings are bad. Sometimes his endings are good, or they're at least, even if they're way far out there, they're still fun to read. Like, Revival was a very wow ending, a very shocking ending in my opinion. And it's also kind of a sad ending too, but it's not a bad one. It's not a terrible, I mean, maybe it's a little over the top at the most, but anyway, we're not talking about Revival. This is a good ending in my opinion. Oh, and there was another criticism I have, which is, and maybe I'm thinking of the 2003 adaptation and how the scene was different in that one. It's been a long time since I even watched that adaptation, so I don't remember. But for some, I wish there had been more there's one particular vampire staking that they had to do that, you know, the vampire had a connection to one of the core group characters. And it kind of, the ending kind of felt a little, that scene felt a little, like it could have used a little bit more to it. I mean, it still had the vampire screaming in pain and showing their sharp teeth and everything, but I feel like in the 2003 adaptation, the two characters had a conversation with each other from what I remember. I could be wrong, but I thought there was more to that scene in the adaptation, and I thought it would be the same in the book, but it really is just the vampire screaming in pain and showing its teeth. And, you know, probably some, like, other stuff was seen, but, like, light, you know. But anyway, so yeah, this was really great. I gave it 5 stars. Although I think you should read it for yourself. Like I said, this is probably more appealing to more of a vampire. People that love vampires probably would like this more. Unless you are on the side of liking the whole romanticized version of vampires. I personally like both versions. I'm good with, I read Twilight. I liked it. I've read the House of Night series, although that one got kind of old really fast after a while. And I did watch the movie version of the Vampire Academy, which I have heard it's going to be a show now. And then there's, I also liked Vampire Diaries for a period of time, although I quit watching that one. I did restart it recently, but that show got really convoluted, apparently. But anyway, if you don't like the romantic version, so I like both versions. I like this stuff, but I also like, the other version of vampires. But anyway, so this was really fun. This was really good. I'm really enjoying rereading it, and it was fun to come back to it, and hopefully this time I'll actually remember it a lot better now that I've read it more recently. And I will try to look for the adaptation of at least the 2003 adaptation. I would love to watch the one from the original one from the 70s, but or it takes place in the 70s. It probably came out in the 80s, the adaptation, but the story is in the 70s, which that's the 2003 adaptation did modernize it and set the timeline farther up, and while the original adaptation from I think it would probably make more sense if it was in the 80s. Probably is a little more authentic to the time period. But it does, it sticks to the time period and makes it in the 70s. So anyway, so I recommend checking out this book if you have not read it yet and you like vampire stories and prefer the more vampires as monsters. Okay, so that's my review of Salem's Lot by Stephen King. Alright. If you guys liked it, be sure to give a thumbs up. Click subscribe if you haven't already. Click the notifications bell. The notifications bell if you want to be notified about when I upload videos. And I hope you're enjoying your reading, and I will talk to you all later. Right, bye!